John Wesley was an important religious figure of the 18th century. He was the founder of the Methodist movement, and he also was in Georgia at a very early and pivotal period of his life. Methodism really began in Oxford in the 1720s and 1730s. John Wesley was a student in Oxford and later a fellow of Lincoln College, Oxford. There he met with a group of other individuals in a small little society or club they called the Holy Club at some points. In terms of the method in Methodism, it really reflects the early part of this group in Oxford where they were very methodical and intentional about the ways that they were trying to approach religion. John Wesley was a member of the Church of England. He was always a member of the Church of England. He never saw Methodism as a separate denomination or religion, but rather a movement within the Church of England. And yet he saw some failings in the Church of England in terms of a lack of emotion or enthusiasm about the religion. While John Wesley was in Oxford, England, he and his group developed a system of journal or diary keeping, and this system included detailing activities of their daily lives, what they were doing, when they did it, and this diary from the period which he was in Georgia is an outgrowth of that. One of the things that he does in this diary is he records his routines, what he's doing, with whom he's meeting, most of his religious activity. Every hour he grades himself on how well he maintained his piety for that moment. And so every hour he gives himself a number grade between 1 and 9, 9 being the highest level of devotion. And then at the end of the day, he would tally those up and give himself an average grade for the day. John Wesley is generally modest in terms of the grades that he gives himself. You'll find a lot of 5s, 6s, and 7s. You rarely see an 8 or a 9. And that reflects some level of maturity on his part at this time period. In this diary, he uses an approach to conceal the information that he's recording by using a particular abbreviation system as well as coded shorthand and this temper of devotion scale. So it's hard for someone who is outside his circle of friends to pick up this diary and to be able to decipher it or read it. Although, because one of his associates, Benjamin Ingham, actually recorded what the abbreviation system details, we are now able to decipher most of what is in this diary. There's a bit of tension between the idea of trying to get back to a primitive, more enthusiastic form of religion while having it encoded in a very rigid, methodical system, like keeping a daily or hourly grade on how well you're doing in terms of faith. For John Wesley, I think it was really a helpful tool in order to keep track of his own development. It was never something that was translated to the larger Methodist movement, although the principle of maintaining the progress of individuals was something that was kept within the movement. And one of the unique features of Methodism is the connectional ministry format that was developed by John Wesley. And so you had groups of people in these Methodist societies that were called classes, and these were larger groups. And then you had smaller groups called bands. The organizational structure of the Methodist movement was rather novel, and John Wesley really promoted having people be in groups that were accountable to each other. You find that people were given class tickets for their participation in the societies, and whether or not they had a proficient amount of religious piety or participation was evaluated by class leaders. At the end of a quarter, people were admitted to a love feast, a gathering of the community together in the Methodist Society. And in order to be admitted to that love feast, they would need to have one of these tickets with the class leader's signature on it in their name. In some ways, the class structure replaces this system of record keeping because it's a way for these Methodist societies to maintain their own form of piety tracking. What he thought was important in his Oxford days and in Georgia was to restore a form of early primitive Christianity. He came to Georgia because he thought that Georgia would be a great place for him to minister, especially among Native Americans who did not have that wide exposure to Christianity and were not tied down to a long-standing interpretation of what Christianity looked like. John Wesley's time in Georgia only lasted about 18 months. He was very excited to practice primitive Christianity here in Georgia, but found in reality that his goals were not very attainable. One of the things that people, especially students of Methodism, find fascinating about this diary is that it records John Wesley's interactions with Sophia Hopke, a woman that he developed a strong relationship with, but eventually broke it off because he wanted to pursue more pious activities and did not need the distraction of a woman at this time in his life. Unfortunately, Sophia Hopke went and married another person in Savannah, and John Wesley created a controversy when he denied her communion shortly after that happened. This eventually led to John Wesley's leaving of Georgia because of the controversy. When John Wesley wrote this diary, he did not have in mind developing a big movement that Methodism would eventually become. And so this was really his own individual form of piety. But later, this sort of approach to making sure you're progressing and tracking your progression became a pivotal part of what was later the Methodist movement within England and America. It's remarkable to think about the influence that John Wesley has had on Christianity in the United States and in England and all over the world, and to think that he held this diary, wrote in this diary, he recorded his activities in this physical piece is wonderful to think about, and it's a fun piece to share with students here at Candler School of Theology who are studying to be Methodist ministers.